And this is Jared with AC7WH Backyard Ham Radio. And today I would like to talk about this antenna that would be great for Parks on the Air, POTA, possibly even Summits on the Air, SOTA, and QRP and QRO. So let me show you an analysis that I did of this antenna, and we'll talk about what you can do to use this antenna without a tuner or with a tuner. All right, so let's start by looking at some quick little notes that I made using my antenna analyzer. So take a look at those. You can probably not see it too well because of the way the focus is going. Those are my little scribble notes. So I'll let you look at the antenna when I'm talking about it. Okay, so this antenna has 14 sections from what I remember. It's the Chameleon SS25, so 25 feet for the antenna, so roughly 8 meters in length. And I ran some tests with my antenna analyzer, the Rig Expert antenna analyzer, and I was able to find what the resonance point was and the SWR for certain frequencies and for various lengths of the antenna. And that's how you can tune this without using a tuner. Just change the length, because there are 14 sections. You can fine tune exactly what length you need. And then of course there's also the radial wires that I use that come off of this as well. And those, if you can see, there's one here, and one there, and it comes down back behind on this raised deck. I definitely recommend checking out my prior videos if you want to see more about this antenna and the projects that I have tried out here and what the setup is like, what equipment I'm using, and so forth. But as far as what I found with my antenna analyzing, I was able to find that when I had one section up, as it is now, I was getting a resonance point at 23.356 megahertz. And keep in mind though that it would probably be best for like the 2 meter band or something like that to have an antenna at that length, because it would be, roughly speaking, about a quarter of a wavelength for the 2 meter band, because that would be roughly half a meter. In fact, it would be a little bit more than half a meter, so still it could be tuned for the 2 meter band if you wanted to do that. But there's lots of things to keep in mind there. Okay, so if I had 2 sections up on this, then that would make it as if it had a resonance point of 23.148 megahertz. Now I noticed there were multiple resonance points when I was analyzing it with my Rig Expert analyzer. So bear that in mind. That doesn't necessarily mean there are multiple SWR low points, but there could be. Keep in mind that resonance isn't necessarily the same as low SWR. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do something here and demonstrate how I have this antenna. Okay, so we saw this with one section. Let's put one section up here. Okay, that is 2 sections. Okay, with 2 sections up, I was getting a resonance at 23.148, and as far as SWR, nothing that was in the ham bands was a significantly low SWR. Okay, let's raise it some more. Okay, going up to 3 sections, so the bottom plus 2 upper sections. Okay. So with that, total of 3 sections, I was getting a resonance at about 28.892 megahertz, and I was getting an SWR of 2.9 to 1, but that was above the 10 meter band. It was at 34.550. Okay, let's take a look at 4 sections. Now, obviously, if you were doing this for a summit on the air, you would want to think about weight and how bulky these items are with the tripod and all of that. But let's see. So 4 sections. We are looking at, with these 4 sections, 22.523 for the resonance. But the SWR was down to 1.61 to 1 at 32.450. All right, let's go ahead and go to the 5th section here, including the bottom section. Okay, the wind's picking up a little bit. All right, making sure everything's nice and tight here. This is my usual arrangement with this antenna. Okay, so with 5 sections, you might be hearing the wind a little bit now. It's pretty breezy at the moment. But with 5 sections, the resonance point was at 21.765 megahertz, and the SWR was at 1.54 to 1 at 24.560 megahertz. And at the middle of the 12 meter band of 24.960 megahertz, it was at 2.04 to 1. Right in the middle of that band. So easily tunable if you just use the internal antenna tuner like in my Yaesu FT DX10 or ICOM IC7300. In fact, in some cases you might be able to get away with it if you're not running too much power at a 2.04 to 1. So essentially a 2 to 1 SWR. But that's in the middle of the band. If you were to go up to, down to the lower part of the band, you would be closer to that 1.5 to 1. In any case, with that, I use this with a tuner on multiple bands. In fact, just last night I was able to reach from here in Oregon over to Louisiana, and the signal report that I was given was that I was at a 5.9 plus. Now that was running about 800 watts or so into it on the 40 meter band. So I was able to tune up, even though right now with these total of 5 sections, so the base and then 1, 2, 3, 4 above that, even though the resonance point and the low SWR point were much higher up in the 12 meter band area, the nice thing was with the tuner, the power got out. So depends on what you have, what kind of space you have available, but the fact that this has so many different sections, you can really customize it. And I'm going to show you more here in a moment, but I'm going to just give a quick rundown of the rest of my notes. So if I were to have 6 sections up, the resonance point would be 21.274, and the SWR would be a 1.13 at 23.210 megahertz. If I had 7 sections, it would be a resonance point. Now the resonance point moved around, probably with different reactances and so forth, and that was at 24.869. Again, keep in mind that there are multiple resonance points that I was finding with this antenna using my Rig Expert analyzer. But with 7 sections, the lowest SWR point was at 20.360, so below the 15 meter band, and that was at a 1.27 to 1. With 8 sections, the resonance point was at 24.472, and the low SWR was at 18.960. So very similar to the 17 meter band. In fact, in the middle of the 17 meter band, I was getting an 2.29 to 1 with the 8 sections, but I was getting a 1.63 to 1 with 9 sections. Speaking of which, that was at a lowest point of SWR of 17.910 with a 1.56 to 1 SWR with 9 sections and a resonance point of 24.188. Now the highest that I made this go up recently without having any kind of guy wires or cables, I've used nylon twine before that worked really well, but without using that, the highest I made this go up was 10 sections, and that was resonating at 23.957 megahertz with a low SWR at 16.860 megahertz, and that was registering 1.98 to 1. So let's see if I can let you see some more of this. So first, here are my cheat sheet notes. I wasn't getting anything that was resonating in the lower bands there. But R is the resonance point that I recorded. S is the low SWR point that I recorded. If that SWR was 3 to 1 or lower, so that a radio could tune it without an external tuner, even though I do use an external tuner, my Palstar HF Auto. But that gives you an idea of the sorts of bands you could use just using that internal tuner. So pretty nice there. So you could use the 17 meter band, the 15 meter band, 12 meter band, and possibly the 10 meter band, but it can be tricky to get the resonance right if you're using entire sections, so that's where you have to be patient and use multiple sections. But this is what it looks like here, going up to about the peak of the roof there. It's a beautiful day, a bit breezy, a bit chilly, but not bad. And then here are these radials. Really more of a counterpoise because this deck is above the ground level. All right. Well, there you have it, everyone. This is AC7WH Backyard Ham Radio 73.